Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Marriage Matters. This is Glenn Coleman. For those of you watching for the very first time, my name is Glenn Coleman. This is my beautiful wife,
Tanya Coleman.
And to our left, we have an awesome, mighty, anointed, Holy Ghost filled, tongue-talking, shouting, revival-bringing, atmosphere-changing couple.
Oh my God. All of that.
Greg and Alexis Jason.
Hello, how are y'all?
So this is their second week with us, and we're just so excited about them being here. We asked them to come on and share with us, and we're just excited about what God is doing in their lives. So I think last week we left off, we were talking about just the process that you guys went through. I think last week you said you've been married a little over 2 years, and so just kind of talk to us about that. What was that process about? What was that process like? And just how did you come to that point? And I guess we were talking before we started about how a lot of times we know in our minds what we want to be,
right?
Or we're going to church, we're getting the word, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's who we are. And I think one of the things about marriage is it helps you. It's an institution. It's an entity that will help you become the person, the man, and the woman that God has called you to become. So just kind of talk about that, what that process was like for you guys.
I think the process of transforming our marriage, or allowing God to transform our marriage, the process for me, it was kind of, I hate to say this, but it was kind of like torturing a little bit, because being in isolation, because my wife had left. I was staying in the house, in the apartment by myself. So that's a lot of time for God to just show you. That's a lot of time for you to just sit and think, a lot of time to sit and think of, well, what if I wouldn't have done that? Or a lot of going back and reflecting on decisions that have already been made. However, it wasn't all bad, because, at that time I drew close to male leadership that could lead me in the right direction. That was a big thing. Pastor Glenn, you walked with us through that. Miss Tanya, you did too. The biggest thing that helped transform us was getting under covering immediately. Getting under somebody who was going to tell us the truth in love, not just tell their agenda or tell us what they think we should do, but giving us the truth, letting us know that, okay, this is bad. We're not going to pretend like this isn't bad. This is bad. However, we believe God, and whatever God wants to happen, we're going to believe Him, and we're going to trust Him, and we're not going to change our perspective on God throughout that journey. It was definitely challenging, but even in the midst of it, as crazy as this is going to sound, even in the midst of all of the bumpy roads and the hiccups, there was still a peace there. I cannot explain it. There was still a peace. There was still a rest. The fact that God was still there, dealing with me, dealing with my heart, dealing with my spouse. It was a challenging process. I'm not gonna say it wasn't challenging, but I can say, looking back, it was worth it. It was
the fact
worth
that
it.
you said that it was a peace, it was a rest, is proof that you were truly submitting to the Father.
Yeah.
I think when a person is in battle with something and they're wanting to hold on to that thing, that you can't have a peace and a rest. You know what I'm saying? So that's powerful, that through all of the turmoil, there was still a peace and a rest, because you had made a decision to submit.
So we talk about this principle in marriage, that marriage is one whole person coming together with one whole person to create one whole marriage. And you said it last episode, Alexis, is that That doesn't mean going into marriage you're going to be perfect.
Right.
But in order for your marriage to be successful, you have to be whole as a person. I was talking with a friend of mine about this, and God was just talking to me and showing me this about how everybody wants to change the world.
Yeah.
But in order for the world to change, I think the thing that let me say it this way. We always want to go after changing the world. And we want to set out, change the world, we're going to win the world for Christ. But how about we concentrate on winning the individual?
Yeah.
Because if the individual changes, then the world does change.
Right.
And I think it's the same thing in marriage.
That's really good.
We want a great marriage, but what that means is that the people in the marriage has to change.
Yeah.
Right. So talk about like what was that process like? How did you get through that process? Alexis, you said, and maybe you can kind of just elaborate on this. You were saying that, when you would talk to God about Greg, God would talk to you about you. So just kind of, and that going back to, again, we wanted a great marriage, but we want the other. We're so busy. Okay, if he would just do this, or if she would just do this,
Be all right.
then our marriage would be so great. I mean, if he would just cater to all my needs and give me everything that I want, it's kind of like what's your girl name? The Tyler Perry. And she was like, I'm not trying to control Marcus. I just want him to do what I say. And that's the kind of I love that line because it's like how we approach marriage a lot of times. It's like I'm not trying to control you. I just want you to do what I say. So just kind of talk about that process of God showing you and going through that transformation, and then how it affected. Talk about how it affected how you saw Greg and how that in turn affected Greg. So I know that's a lot, but
well, I think I had to realize that I wasn't fully leaning on God in my marriage. And when I realized that, it was like, okay, you're looking at your husband, God talking to me, you looking at your husband, but you're not even being obedient. So what are you doing that's off? Because even if he's disobedient, you're not supposed to be disobedient. Because I still have to answer to God at the end of my life, regardless of what he does. So when he began to deal with me like that, it was like, okay, in a situation where there may be fussing or you may not be getting your way or whatever the case may be, or maybe you brought an issue to your husband and he wasn't listening or whatever the case may be. Like, how are you handling it whenever he responds the way he responds?
Yeah.
And so I had to get out of the way because really what I was doing was making it worse. I kept trying to pull on him and you need to respond this way, or like my feelings would be really, really hurt because I'm like, well, the word says this and the word says that. And I had to realize I can't change him. Only God, only the Holy Spirit can change him.
Yeah.
So that was the beginning of God dealing with me. And what happened was my marriage began to change when God showed me, look, take your hands off of it, give it to me, fully submit, like lay down, die to yourself, and start being obedient to me. So there was one time I remember, because I used to tell on Greg, like I would go, like I was at Starbucks,
That's awesome.
and something happened between me and him, and the world says, oh, you have a right to be upset.
Yeah.
You should leave him, all that, you know. So I'm in my feelings, and I'm like, God, he did this to me, and I felt like I had a right, and I did, because your feelings are valid.
Yes.
But when I went to God, he responded to me differently. It wasn't more like, it's going to be okay, like he usually does. What he said was, get out of your feelings. I said, really? Like, you? But what he was trying to tell me was, okay, when someone does you wrong, what are you supposed to do? What's the truth? And it was to forgive him, no matter what it was that he was doing. So when God began to talk to me like that, and I began to apply the word, that's what really changed our marriage. Because then, like, the seeds that I was planting in him of obedience to God and love and and still being faithful to him, and just creating an atmosphere of peace instead of trying to like make stuff happen, it started to grow.
And I think with what she said at the beginning about not leaning totally on God, like one of the things that I noticed, like I made the environment so me-centric. Like that's one of the things I did do. Like it was always about like, okay, this is what I want to accomplish. This is what I want to do, you know. And it kind of makes it hard to breathe. Like, and I could see that, you know, I can see that now.
That's good.
Like, cause I can at times have a big personality, outgoing personality, and I'm very like forthright about, you know, particularly like we talked about in the last episode. And I know what I want. Like if I want to get something, but in that same way, though that can be an advantage at times, you get surrounded by yourself, and you can even see what your spouse is trying to communicate. You can even filter what your spouse is trying to communicate to you with an open and honest heart through just the lens of what you want to, through yourself. So that was one of the things that I think even affected her leaning on God. Like that could have potentially, you know, thank God for his grace, but that could have potentially caused her to go astray because it was so me-centric at that time. So that was one of the things too.
That's awesome. You know, I was listening to Alexis and what you were sharing, how God dealt with you and led you to deal with Greg was compassion. And I feel like we as believers, we can show a stranger on the street so much compassion. But when it comes to our spouses, to the people that are closest to us, we struggle to show that compassion. And if we would just learn to show our spouses, our children, our family members compassion, it will completely change our relationships. And I think we don't show the compassion because of our perspective. Our perspective is so centered on what you said to me, what you did to me, if you're meeting my needs. You know, so it's me. And so it's hard for me to show you compassion because I feel like I'm not getting what I need from you. But if we truly show compassion, if we learn to be vulnerable and to have communication, you know, it changes everything.
Wow.
You know, and so what you did was you showed your husband compassion.
And I think maybe one of the reasons, and you talked about this earlier, Alexis, you were saying how God had to remind you of how much you were forgiven. And I think we're so quick to forget that as believers. We forget, oh, wait a minute, you know, I was tripping too and God still loved me. You know, and so you had talked about a vision that God had showed you about Greg. Even when Greg was, you know, doing whatever, God was showing you. So kind of talk about that and how that changed your perspective for Greg. And then I want you to talk about how when she changed her the way she responded to you, how you dealt with that and how that made you feel.
So I just want to give a little background, I guess. So at the time we were going through adultery, I kept, you know, seeing messages. I kept, you know, and I could feel it in his heart. So I was really hurt. I was really angry. I kind of felt resentment too, because I was like, this can't be God. This can't, you know, like we're supposed to have it this way. It's supposed to be like this. The word says this, you know. And so God, he gave me a vision. And my vision was that he was walking in heaven. He was in pure white. His feet, like he didn't have shoes on, but his feet, like, I didn't even see his face, but like... If his feet were nice, I know that was a vision. Oh, manicure, you know, or whatever. But his essence, like, his essence, I could feel it in my spirit, that it was pure and it was clean. And God was, in turn, just showing me, this is how I see him. This is my son. And I'm like, you know, at first, because I'm going through so much hurt, and I'm actually seeing what, you know, so it really, but when I experienced that, it was like something in me shifted, so I couldn't see him for what he was doing. Like, I saw him for how God would see him. And it was like slowly like breaking me down. Like, okay, my son, this is my son. So that means the forgiveness that I gave you applies to him. And the righteousness that you don't have, but you take from me,
Wow,
is his too.
That's so good.
So I was
Wow.
like, okay, God, you changing my heart. I just submit. I receive your love for him, and God, like, I just want him to show me, like, you know, show me how to love him now.
Yeah.
Because now you're changing my view of him. Show me what to do for him. You know.
Awesome.
Throughout that process, I think I snowballed into, like, after it happened, the adultery, because it was to a point where I was like, why am I even, like, I'm just being honest. Like, some people won't believe you when you say that, but in my mind, it was like, why am I doing this? Like, I was asking myself, I was like, why am I doing this? And it was just, I just know it was a root of something, but to this day I don't have like a logical explanation why I was doing it. But when I seen my wife change, you know, and I seen her continue, and I think what actually helped our marriage is when I saw her strength. When I saw her strength, because I came from, before my dad changed, because at first I saw like, the man is the strength, he's strong, is gonna be what I'm gonna say, what I'm gonna do. And I thought in my head, you know, with going in the word, I was like, nah, I'm not like that, you know. And I had even saw, you know, back then, like I had saw like how my dad was, and I was like, I don't want that. But yet and still, the seeds still get in regardless. If you see it, you hear it, it's in there. So I started acting that way and started manifesting that same behavior. So in my mind, I had a perspective of her like, well, she's weak, she's always crying, she's always, and one of the biggest things that I took emotions for weakness. That was one of the biggest things, my biggest perspective. Like, I thought, like, okay, because she's always emotional or she's expressing this, I took it for weakness. But when I saw her ability to forgive, when I saw her ability to endure, when I saw her ability to keep on pressing, when we had our baby, she went through the C-section, like all of these things, because this was, I think, like, this chapter ended when our daughter finally was born. That's when I feel like the chapter closed and opened up to something
prophesy,
new.
Eden.
And so, opened up to something new. So whenever I saw that strength, I was like, I gotta respect her.
yeah,
like she's a G. Like, and I needed that. I needed that because, like, I come from, you know, how my dad raised me. Then you come from the military where it's like, no excuses, no emotions, no crying. And like you said in the last episode, them drilling that all into you. So I'm taking all of this stuff and then I'm trying to live life off of it, you know, plus the word. So I got a whole bunch of the world, and then I got a year, 4 years concentrated of the word that I've been getting in. Of course, it's going to be a bigger battle. So when I saw her strength and when I saw her rise up and she stopped, like, she really stopped making excuses and for everything, not just in the relationship, but everything. She just started rising up stronger and stronger. Then it brought something in me. It was like, that's the one. Like that. Yeah. Like, like, I know now, like, she down to do, not whatever, but she's ready to go. Like, and that's what we have in our marriage. That I feel like, I think we were kind of like, well, God's telling me this, and she'll be like, well, I don't know, and then I'll be like, well, she'll be like, God telling me this, and I'll be like, I don't know. But now we're like, okay, we're gonna trust that each other has a relationship.
That's good.
And then we're gonna trust that each other has the capability to hear. We're gonna pray, and now we ride and die for each other. So.
Awesome, y'all.
So you talked about that male ego persona, and I often say this, especially as, you know, not just a man, but a black man. That is something that we don't do well. We don't acknowledge emotions well. and let me not speak for all black men,
Right.
but
right.
I know about the way I was
A large percentage.
raised.
Right.
I don't think I ever saw my dad cry. I don't think.
Me, man.
Just thinking back, not even when his mom died,
Mhm.
I don't ever remember him. I don't ever, I had a great father, but
Right.
I never remember my dad telling me I love you.
Right.
I just can't recall that.
Right. That's,
Maybe when I was little, but I can't recall my dad hugging me. And Lord knows he's never kissed me on the cheek or anything, totally out of the question, But my point is that, we don't process emotions very well. And like you were saying, we perceive emotions as weakness. And I think a lot of times in marriage, when we don't have great emotional intelligence,
right.
that can be
That's
a
really
detriment to our marriage. So I was kind of telling you guys, like, I know for me, when Tanya would do something that hurt my feelings, or I don't know, maybe I don't even feel comfortable saying that, but it's but when she did, instead of me saying, when you did that, it made me feel this way. What I did was I put another layer of that hard shell up, because dog it, I'm a man, and you're not gonna hurt me, and and so what it caused me to do was instead of going to her and sharing my feelings or sharing how that affected me, I withdrew and I pulled further away. And when you keep doing that, you look up one day and there's this huge gulf in between you. So you kind of talked about that. So how did you get through that? How did you? And I know you had said another thing. You said that when Alexis, when she had the vision and she kind of changed the way she saw you and changed the way she talked to you and treated you. You kind of alluded to how you was like, I don't like that, because you were not used to someone speaking that way to you, or speaking life into you, or affirming you. So how did you get through that and overcome that?
A practical step is that before we got back together, Alexis said, I want you to go to counseling. And at first I was like, nah. I never said that though. I never said that, but I was like, nah.
Because again, I don't want to interrupt, but that's another one of those stigmas that,
and it's cultural,
it's cultural, and even like so in the black community, it's like if you go to a counselor, that means
you're crazy.
You're crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. What goes on in this house stays in this house.
Number two, as a believer, a lot of times it's like all you need is the word.
Right.
And,
We feel that it diminishes our faith.
and but it's not true. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there. Go. So you went to the counselor.
I went to the session with the counselor, not knowing how it was gonna go, but she just let me say she let me express myself. And after all of that happened, I felt empty for the first time, because it was a lot of days where I was walking around like face stuck. And I remember I used to laugh. My first grade teacher, I used to always like, I'd want to talk in class, and she would tell me, be quiet, and I'd be like. And then she said, if you keep on doing that, your face is going to get stuck like that one day.
Wow.
And then I found myself walking around like that.
Wow.
And those same words, her voice popped up back in my head. If you keep making that face, it's going to get stuck like that one day. So I found that during my everyday, even though I would be able to push it off and push it down and smile and put the face on for everybody else, when I'm by myself or when I'm not conscious of it, my face was back like that. And inside of me, it felt like a balled up fist, like on the inside. That's the only way I can explain it. So I went to the counselor, and she told the physical abuse, the adultery, the part that I was justified in, and the part that I was wrong in. We talked about all of it, and nothing happened. I wasn't hurt after. I felt a lot better, and I think it's the release.
Yes.
the release allows you to take something else out and start putting something else in. So sometimes we try to just pour something else in, and then there's no other room. There's no other room to put anything else in because you still holding on to this. So when I saw that was I think you asked last episode basically what was another checkpoint too, and that was definitely another one because I went to the counseling and released all that. And then I came to the Married for Life classes. And then that's when I opened up to you guys and I started saying, well, man, I miss my wife. But at first I was like, I wasn't trying to hear anything. But as I just expressed myself and told them, you know, walked through how I felt in the midst of all of it, in the midst of the altercation, in the midst of everything that was happening, I actually went through it instead of ran from it. And so it was just healthy, and then it was like, that is that simple. We can move on now, and that's what helped me. And
I think there's a scripture that talks about confessing your faults one to another.
Yes.
And I think we automatically assume that just means you go confess your sin, or quote unquote sin. But I think part of it is that sometimes you just need to say, I know I'm not supposed to feel this way, but this is how I feel, and just let it. And the other scripture that comes to mind is you can't put new wine into old wine. That's good. So a lot of times when you release all that stuff, it like you said, it makes room. It empties your heart and allows you to put the good stuff in.
And I never thought about it that way because after the confessing your faults, it says so that you may be healed.
Right.
So I never thought about that.
Yeah.
I just knew, like, every day it was like a ball. It was like a balled up fist, like so tense, the tension and everything. And so when I did that, it was like, it just was the principle of the word coming to pass. I didn't recognize it at the time, but it just opened up for a whole new person. I could put somebody new in there.
Yeah. I love that you said when you got it all out. It's like sometimes coming to counseling is like having a huge, and this is maybe gross, but it's like having a huge throw up, like having a huge regurgitation of all the yucky stuff that's down on the inside of you. And then, like you said, you have an opportunity to now refill with healthy things, healthy ways of being, thinking, and feeling. But when you said that when you got it all out, nothing happened. Like, I didn't explode. The world didn't end.
You still were a man.
You were still a man, But that fist was gone. So that feeling and that balled upness, that anger, that cover was now brought down. And you can now be open and receive, and I think that it's important, for our viewers to know that when you are hurting and you don't understand why you're hurting, most likely it's because of something in your past, something that you experienced, and now in this season of your life, you are facing a challenge that is now bringing that old thing up. It's like it's trying to pull it up out of the roots, and you don't know quite how to let it happen. It's okay to get help. It's okay to go and see a counselor, to go and see a therapist, to talk to a close, trusted friend that is mature enough to walk you through the process. It's okay. It doesn't matter if you're male, you're female, you're African American, Caucasian, Asian, whatever. Everybody needs help from time to time, and it's okay to go and get help. Counselors see counselors, and that's okay. We all need help from time to time. So that was beautiful, a beautiful picture.
Melissa, one of our instructors at the kitchen table, life coaching program, shout out to kitchen table. But she says a counselor, they're a story holder.
Yes.
And I like that.
Wow.
She said that's our job, is to hold people's stories, and because they've been holding it for so long, she's like, you're a story catcher. That's how she described it.
And we put it in a vault that came out to me very recently, that we take the stories and you put it in a vault. And you lock it up.
That's so powerful.
So, I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to bring Greg and Alexis on. And, again, guys, we always say this, that marriage it's not perfect, but we are. Paul said it best. He said, this is what he said. I'm not saying that I've apprehended, that I've reached this thing. But one thing I do, I forget what's behind me, and I press toward the mark of the prize of the high calling, which is Christ. And that's what marriage is all about. It's pursuing that perfection. It's pursuing that relationship, and the way you do that is by working out your stuff and moving forward. So, look, I always say this: any marriage can work, no matter what you're going through, whatever it is. If it's adultery, if it's abuse, if whatever it is, you can come out on the other side of that and have a great marriage. And get the help. Like Tanya was saying, there are countless people out there. Inbox us. I mean, people inbox me all the time, and now I've had to learn to check my inbox because I'm not. I don't do that very well. But it's like I'll go on my inbox and it's like 4 messages. It's like, how can we meet with you guys? And I love it because that's what we're all about. We're about just empowering you, giving you tips and tricks and tools to help you be successful, because that's our desire, is just to see you succeed in your marriage. We've declared a war on divorce.
Yeah, that's good.
And we want to see you successful. We want to give you the tools to make sure you succeed. So we're going to wrap up, but I want you guys just to give the people maybe just one thing, maybe something that you wish you knew going into this, or that you've learned since you've been married. Just giving them one thing to encourage them to stick it out, to walk through it, or to, even if your marriage is great, let's make it better. So just give the people.
So this is what just came to me. Change and growth can be separate, but they often come together. That's what I can say. Because I wanted to grow. I was on fire to grow, but I wasn't on fire to change. But they often go hand in hand. So if you see things changing in your marriage, whether they be for the worse or for the good, there's often an opportunity to grow centered right in that. So.
That's good.
And mine is forgiveness. I think that it's important to stay in forgiveness. If you're dealing with unforgiveness, I know it can be hard to release that. It's hard to just say, okay, God, like, I'm going to forgive them and then walk out their process. But you got to choose it. And then you just submit to God and you allow him to deal with your heart. And you don't keep bringing up the issue. You don't keep reliving it. Like, you got to make a choice to move forward. So
make a choice to move forward.
Awesome.
And change and growth goes hand in hand. I like that. I'm going to use that one. I'm going to use that one. Because, it's like, somebody who was an old country western singer. I can't remember who it was, but he had this song and it said, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. And it's kind of the same thing. Everybody wants to grow, but nobody wants to change. So that's really good. So just tell the people, where they can get in contact with you. Tell them about what's going on. Talk about the business and anything else you want them to know about the Jasons.
Lord's yours.
You can find us on Facebook. That's the only social media I'm on. Alexis is on several. I'm only on Facebook under Gregory Jason. My wife is under Alexis Jason. You can look us up for our business, Grand Cleansing. Be looking out for, we're going to get into dance media, more music media, different forms of media. And there's one more thing too I want to say to help with the marriages. I know there's a real big change in our marriage when we found something to do together. That was a really big thing when we were, because at first we were like, well, she wanted to start her dance business. And I was like, well, I'm going to rap, I'm going to do music. But there was never anything that said, hey, y'all do this together. And when we found something to do together, it became the Garden of Eden situation where we were working on this particular garden together. And it wasn't just one thing. So our business, Grand Cleansing, is a commercial and residential cleaning company. That's the thing that the Lord allowed us to do together. So,
Awesome.
Okay. And, Tanya and I really want to thank you guys for all the support, for following us, leaving the comments, watching the videos, sharing the videos. And as always, you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Marriage Matters 0526. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube page. What else?
Make sure you click the little bell.
Yeah,
so
click
that
the
you
bell, get
every
notified,
time we
all that
post.
stuff. Hey, if you want to reach out to us and you don't want to do it on Facebook or whatever, you can always send us a text message.
Yes.
And you can text us at 337-415-9535. 337-415-9535. Or send us an email if you still do that. Info at marriagematterstous.com. Info at marriagematterstous.com. And that's all we have for you today. Thank you for the Jasons coming on.
Thank y'all.
This won't be the last time you're gonna see them. We're gonna have them on again. But we're just so grateful for you guys to come on and share your story. And I know it's gonna help so many people.
Absolutely.
So that's all we got. You got anything else, beautiful lady?
No, sir, I don't. This has
Okay.
been great. Thank you.
All right. Well, this is Glenn and Tanya Coleman saying your
Marriage matters.
We'll see you next week.